This is the GenWhy Leaders Podcast. Welcome to the GenWhy Leaders Podcast, where we guide millennials to become the next generation of business leaders and entrepreneurs. I'm your host, Eric Huey, and multiple times a month, we bring you interviews from high-performing millennials who are challenging perceptions and changing expectations of our generation. Our mission is to help you overcome fear, take action, and go confidently in the direction of your dreams. It's time to start preparing now, mainly because 10,000 baby boomers are retiring every day, which will create a vacuum of career opportunities that you've been waiting for. Will you be ready? Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the GenWhy Leaders Podcast. If you listened in to our last episode, we do have the unfortunate news that we are wrapping up the podcast, but it's been an awesome journey. Here alongside me have my co-host for the last few episodes, Jonathan Hale, who is our social media manager. How's it going, Jonathan?
Doing well. How are you?
Good. Glad to have you back and be wrapping this up. Bittersweet, but a lot of positives to be derived from it. So just to kind of recap the episodes, if you listened to the last one, I asked Jonathan a lot of questions about his perspective, his learnings on social media, since that was really what he handled for the podcast. And then in this episode, Jonathan will ask me more specifically about podcasting and kind of building the brand, why I started it, things like that. And then the next episode, that is episode 100, we're kind of got to recap the show, total downloads, top downloaded episodes, social media following, and some of our successes, as well as just some of our favorite memories. So if that interests you, feel free to stay tuned. But like I said, in this episode, Jonathan's going to kind of interview me, which will be somewhat new. But Jonathan, anything top of mind for you before we kick it off here?
Oh man, I'm ready to get started.
Awesome. Whenever you're ready, my man.
All right. So just, obviously the intro sort of alludes to this, but talk about why you started the podcast.
Yeah. So I've always had a entrepreneurial spirit. And so the podcast was really kind of my first entrepreneurial endeavor. The books I read and the resources I was reading as I was pursuing entrepreneurship, everything said just to start with something that your quote unquote domain experience. So a podcast was definitely in that wheelhouse. I had studied broadcast media and PR in college and done all the classes to, interview people, hold a conversation, edit audio and video. And it just felt natural to kind of pursue that. And then I really just had to land on the topic. And as I mentioned, I had the entrepreneurial spirit. So I said, why not something business and, entrepreneurship and leadership related, goals and success. Always been a very driven individual and setting goals and whatnot. So just seemed kind of like the perfect opportunity. And we talked about this in the last episode, but I always, especially coming out of college, I felt like there's a big negative connotation with the millennial generation. And now that we're hitting 40, I think some of that has faded away and gone to Gen Z and all the TikTok goers. But yeah, in a nutshell, that's kind of why I started it and what encouraged me to pursue it. Specifically to 100 episodes, the research I did around podcasting was that to monetize it and really make it a business, you had to get to that 100 episode mark just to kind of build the following, build that kind of critical mass of followers to where you get regular, consistent amount of downloads. And that way it warrants advertising dollars to be able to monetize it. So I think that covers it. That's pretty much it in a nutshell.
I should say millennials are hitting 40. We've got some time.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
It's talk about, ending the podcast. Any reluctance there? What are your feelings on that one?
Yeah, definitely bittersweet. I know I've mentioned MJ DeMarco on a lot of podcast episodes. He's one of my favorite business related authors, but he talks about the concept of sunk cost bias, meaning you just keep pouring into something thinking that it's going to eventually work, but we also know it's kind of the definition of craziness to keep trying something and, expecting a different result. And so, yeah, definitely bittersweet in that regard, as far as like, hey, I really wanted this to turn into a larger platform and, have even more noteworthy individuals and entrepreneurs, which I think we really did do well within just 100 episodes. We got a lot of big name people locally and nationally. But yeah, I think there's a lot of positives to be derived from it that outweigh the negatives. And we can kind of get to this as far as more the reasons why, is, positives and negatives, and why, more particularly why I stopped. But broadly, definitely was some reluctance to stop. And I actually have you to thank. Most people don't know that, to keep going. I think I texted you I think right after like 75 episodes, and I was like, man, I don't think we should keep it going. The downloads aren't exactly where we need. And you knew that my goal was to go to 100 episodes. So thank you for pushing me, and you and my wife and Cassie, and just a few, people who are close to me really encouraged me to push it on to 100 episodes, because that again was the original goal. So really glad we did it and stuck to it and made it this far.
Man, for sure. What tips would you offer others who are interested in starting a podcast or just getting started?
Oh man, so many. I think, I guess, from more of a tactful standpoint, and this, I guess, is kind of the golden rule I teased on the last episode. But what I've learned is that you shouldn't start a podcast unless it's really one of two things. One, that you are, a very noteworthy individual. You have a lot of clout, maybe is the right way to say it, in whatever realm or domain that you operate in. And to where, like, for instance, if Patrick Mahomes, Kansas City Chiefs quarterback, went out tomorrow and started a podcast, it would be monetized from day one, because sponsors would jump at the chance to partner with him because they know he's going to garner a huge following. So the monetization route is one. And then two, if you can't monetize it and really have it be the business, similar to like, what Joe Rogan or How I Built This or Tim Ferriss, any of those big name podcasters where the podcast is really their business, then it really needs to be a marketing tool, a marketing funnel for your business itself, or, whatever career path that you're in, because there's so many great, rich, fruitful conversations that can dovetail into business related opportunities, to where I think if you're going to take this on, it's a very time intensive endeavor to really go one of those two paths. And that's why I call it the golden rule, because I think right now we're in this kind of gray area after all this time, is that it's not monetized, but also it's like not feeding a funnel or building brand awareness for either one of us in our careers in terms of getting more sales or business opportunities. So yeah, that's the broad golden rule that I think people should stick to. And then I guess more specifically to, just a couple tips, I guess one would be to pick a niche. And then once you think you have landed on a niche down even further. I think there's a lot to be said as far as if you're marketing to everyone, you're really marketing to no one. And so I think if we could go back and do it again, maybe I'd start from day one, really narrow it down to just entrepreneurs, millennial entrepreneurs, because we did start broadly and do really any business professionals, and then kind of pivot to more entrepreneurship focus a little later. And so, yeah, just niching down in general, niching down. That's been a whole side topic and sidebar conversation, is how you phrase that word or pronounce it rather.
Yeah.
And then I would say definitely in terms of record a few in advance before you launch. Just go to your friends and family and say, hey, here's 3 episodes I recorded about a podcast I want to start. Like, do you think this is interesting? Do you think it'll resonate with people? And hopefully those people closest to you will give you unfiltered feedback and tell you to pursue it or not, and whether you should get, niche down further or not. And then I guess the third point would be to one, kind of part A, part B, but one, keep a backlog of your recordings to where, whatever date you're publishing, you have 2 or 3 in the queue or hopper, whatever you want to refer to it as, that way, whenever you're recording, you don't, whatever your recording schedule is, you don't have to like freak out if someone cancels or you get sick and, your recording schedule is off. So, yeah, definitely keep a backlog. And then part B of that is batch recording. So if you're posting 4 episodes a month, I would say, every week we try to record at least 2 and record them back to back at, 3 and 4 p.m. on a Friday or something like that. But gosh, I feel like I could talk hours about this. So if anyone wants to chat and, brainstorm about a podcast that they're thinking about, always more than happy to share my thoughts and be a sounding board.
Cool. What do you think we did well? You did well. I should say you did well, but
yeah, I think I've always been, as very outward focused and interested in people, and always been in like PR and sales driven positions to where connecting with people is really easy for me and something that comes naturally. And so I think recruiting some big name guests. I mean, we've had people that are on Shark Tank, excuse me, not Shank Tank. That sounds like a prison movie.
Squid Game.
Yeah, Shark Tank, Forbes 30 under 30. Yahoo Business Entrepreneurs, just tons and tons of people that have just been really well known in their spaces. So I think that's something we did really well. I think having a variety of segments, as far as like the regular episodes where we do interviews like this, the book breakdowns, which you mentioned, I think were a really big hit. I wish we could have done more, but those require the audience to participate, which I think was kind of a cool concept too in itself, as far as like getting past guests and even future guests and people have no interest in being guests, but just want to do a book breakdown on and just kind of give the spotlight over to them, I thought was really cool. So wish we could have done more of those. And the other segment was the mentor segments, as far as, learning from older generations and passing down that knowledge. So I think having some variety in content, I think, is something we did really well, other than, recruiting some pretty big name guests in just 100 episodes.
Cool. What do you think we could have improved on?
Yeah, great question. I think the more podcasts I hear, and especially the really successful ones, the intros are actually pretty short. I think they're like a lot of maybe just 15 seconds, 30 seconds tops. And I think if we'd clock ours, it'd be like 1 minute, maybe 1:10. And so I think once you do kind of build that, loyal following, they know what they're listening to. So they probably just fast forward on their devices or whatever platform they're listening on through the intro anyways. So I think shortening the intro and then making it more like segment specific intros, I think would help, as far as just catching people's attention and getting them straight to the content more so. And then trying a different show format. You mentioned this earlier, maybe on the last episode, but trying like a Instagram live or a YouTube live, to where, you maybe build a little bit more brand awareness if people are scrolling through their feed and see something like, oh, well, what's this? And I think, that would be interesting to see if there would be any type of different response or results in downloads or views, things like that. And then I mentioned this just a little bit ago, but niching down more from the get-go. I think even besides entrepreneurship from the get-go, I think there's maybe even 1 or 2 more layers we could have put on it. It would have got very narrow, but I think would also been very focused to where we could have provided a ton of value. And one of those that comes to mind is acquisition entrepreneurship. And just one of these very last episodes that should be posted by now, but is with a local guy here in Kansas City named Daniel Lee. He mentions this at the end of the episode. He's like, there's really only like 2 or 3 books on acquisition entrepreneurship. And so I feel like, some topic like that, to where not a lot of people know about it, where you could just convey tons and tons of value, I think is really kind of the name of the game. And then lastly, I think just engaging the guest after the fact, after the episode posted. I think we're really good about tagging them on social, but I think I could have took it one step further, email them, and even go as far as to like write out sample social media posts on their behalf and say, hey, I was just on the GenWhy Leaders Podcast. I was in episode 12. Check it out. Here's all the, platform links, choose the one best for you. And like, I just think that would have multiplied a lot of our downloads, especially if all those platforms were listed in, a LinkedIn post or whatnot. And I think of someone like Brooks Mosier. He was early on, I think in the 20s on his episode, but he's one of the few people to actually tag his episode to his profile. It's kind of on LinkedIn, that is, as kind of like a, portfolio kind of piece of work or something relevant to his business. And so it just lives there on his profile. So anytime anyone comes to his profile now, since he's recorded with us and that's posted through the future, people are going to see that and click on it. And we'll get to this later on in the next episode, but his episode is actually one of the most downloaded. And I think that has a huge factor as to why he's in the top 10.
What has been your favorite thing about it? Not necessarily a favorite guest or favorite episode. What will you take from this experience?
Yeah, I think honestly, just a big confidence boost. I mean, I've always been very goal driven and just driven in general, but I also think I've had a little bit of an imposter syndrome. I'm not sure if that's just being in more of like what I'm told is, soft skill type education and career path and things like that. But I think, yeah, just building confidence in that I could set my mind to something and go after it and achieve it. And not so much even worrying about proving it to others, but just proving it to myself that I could do it. And just hearing other people's stories too. Like, I mean, you listen to any one of the 100 episodes, granted, not all of them were with a guest, but if you listen to anyone's story, no one was without adversity in their path. And, everyone made plenty of mistakes, probably more mistakes than they made successes or achievements. And so I think just knowing that you are going to fail and to just fail fast and move on and learn from it, that I think will bode well for me in the future too.
Yeah, great insights, Eric. I really, again, I appreciate being along for the ride, but I think anyone listening to the podcast can certainly glean some great advice, huge insights going forward into their own podcast journey.
For sure. Yeah. Thanks for your help. And I'm reluctant that we waited to this point to get on the mics together and talk it out a little bit, but I know it'll build confidence and help us in our personal and professional lives moving forward. So can't thank you enough. Appreciate the time to ask questions. And for those listening, that wraps up episode 99, crazily enough. And we'll wrap up this episode and we'll see you here in the next one, episode 100, just to kind of recap download, social media following, favorite episodes and quotes, and just reminisce a little bit before we officially close it out. So we will see you in the next one. Thanks for listening. That wraps up today's episode. We hope to have brought you some valuable key takeaways. Most importantly, whatever you learned, take action on it. Apply it to your life. Apply it to your career. Motivation and inspiration only come as a result of taking that first step. So if you're enjoying the podcast, don't forget to like and subscribe on whichever platform you found the show. You can also follow us on all the major social media platforms or contact us directly at GenWhyLeaders@gmail.com. That's GenWhy leaders@gmail.com. Until next time, I'm Eric Huey, and thanks for listening to the GenWhy Leaders Podcast.